Oh, welcome to my brand new mat that I have for doing these videos. It is currently sitting over my old nasty green one, which I still do all my installs on. This is just nice just to do the videos on. Less disgusting, less shiny. And speaking of disgusting, it is awfully hot today. Really muggy, really humid here in the UK today. Sweating like crazy, and I'm in my office with my printer going at the moment because I'm working on new chassis constantly, and PLA is stringing. It's too warm for it, but I'm just doing tester pieces anyway. Got my window open. Forgive me if you hear any background noise. My neighbours having a little garden party, not too loud or anything like that, just they got a couple of friends over. So if you hear anything, I'm so sorry. Hopefully you can hear me and everything comes across clearly. A few little distractions there. But anyway, right, so let's talk about these two beautiful hilts I have in front of me. These are by 89sabers. I purchased this just for my pleasure from JQ Sabers here in the UK. Just literally because I really love this design of hilt. This Ventress hilt here. I like all of her hilts. She always has a really nice hilt in her hand, but this is really cool. So this Ventress side really took my eye. It's just so slim in hand. I love this Swiss cheese venting here. Really gorgeous. You've got room for a nice crystal chamber up there. Yeah, really nice. And Darth Maul here. I've never actually owned one of these. I have one of the things that came about a good few years ago now. One of the many things I was known for when I had my Etsy store. Etsy. Was my Darth Maul chassis. So in 2020. 89sabers released their Darth Maul 2020, which was retailed at Corbanth, but I had one sent to me from my friend Rob from Kyber Customs to design a chassis for, of which I designed a chassis, and it had spaces to light up the accent lights, the crystal at the bottom as well. So I designed a really nice chassis that could fit in that hilt in the 2020. And some of the Corbanth installers, specifically Chris Adams from Adams Custom Sabers, had reached out saying I'd really like to use this chassis for my own personal install, and I know a few other installers that want to use it as well. So that's one of the connections of how I got to work with Corbanth for a little bit. And then in 2021, 89sabers released the Darth Maul 2021, of which I think Saber Dave sent me one to design a chassis for, or he sent me a few sets to install, and I've discovered that the internal sizes had changed, so had to do a new design for that as well. And then during that time, Corbanth, in 2021, Corbanth had ripped off the 2020 version by 89sabers and released their one in 2022, which is a copy of the DM 2020, mostly a copy of a few internal sizes were different, but all the other, how it assembled, everything else was exactly the same. No good. So I highly recommend getting the 89sabers version of this Darth Maul hilt. Don't get a rip-off. It's not something that anybody should support. And so I bought this. I've forgotten what JQ Sabers called it. It may have been called the Shadow Maul on their website. And I'm aware 89sabers, they don't have consistencies within the internal spaces of their hilts. Don't know why. It's the same on the Fallen V3, hence why we took down the chassis at Saber Bay, because they were releasing Fallen V3s that had all different internal sizes that made it very hard to make a chassis, design a chassis for that was consistent from hilt to hilt. It could be batch difference, it could be literally from individual hilts within the batches as well, we'd find differences. But in this version here with the Shadow Maul, I found there's a few minor changes from the 2021 chassis I designed, mainly to do with these screws here that sit outside near the accent lights. They required to sit a bit further in once they're tightened up. They're loose at the moment before getting the chassis in and out, and I'll show you how that works in a second. And I discovered the plungers needed to sit a little bit higher in the chassis in order to engage onto the buttons. Nothing too dramatic, but something that required a redesign of the chassis, which is nice. I really like doing Darth Maul chassis because it's just a big old clump. Look at that. I've got a Profi board, accent pixel, accent pixel, accent pixel down at the bottom there for your crystal. Got an OLED screen, high amp kill switch, 18650 removable battery. And so this was an interesting project, these two hilts, because I wanted to try something a little different. I'm a big fan of Echo speakers, but I had bought some Smugglers Outpost 22mm speakers, which when I installed them, I don't want to jump to assumptions, but they weren't good. Out of the box, they just weren't good. They weren't very loud, they crackled, they distorted, the top face peeled off on all of the edges. That little soft matte face that you get on the top of the speakers, it just it wasn't adhered on. Whether it was damaged during transportation, I'm not sure. I did try it again when I installed the Ventress, and with another 22mm speaker by Smugglers Outpost, and it did the exact same thing. Whether it's a batch problem where I had some that were damaged in transportation, I don't know. I've ordered two more. I'm not writing them off just yet. Let's find out all the reasons first before I start writing things off. I'm always willing to give something a second chance. But I ended up, because I hadn't got the new speakers on me, I went and installed these with some Echo speakers, and they're beautifully loud, beautifully crisp, project the sound really well, which I am grateful for. I'm glad I had those in stock. And yeah, that sits at an angle, this speaker sits at an angle, so it projects the sound mostly downwards, which is more ideal than sitting it sideways, because then you're getting the bounce, the reverb back off the inside of the hilt, distorting the sound on the speaker again. You're not projecting it at least slightly towards where the sound is venting. So it's really important if you get one of these that I really do recommend the 22mm Echo speakers at the moment. But as I say, I'll give the Smugglers Outpost another run. It's never a write-off. I could have just hit a bad batch, that's all. So installing this Darth Maul, nice and easy. You've got a blade retention screw up here. I've got the blade plug in there at the moment. Two plungers. These screws here hold on the pommel, these fake buttons I should say, they are screws, which the set comes with a coupling system. It's not my favourite coupling system in the world. I personally feel like it needs more than two screws just to hold it all together, but it works. It's a nitpick. I still like it because you can still have this awesome crystal detail at the bottom here. Imagine that weathered would look really sick. But yeah, as it comes, that's really nice. So to put the chassis in, since Saber is getting some of these 89sabers hilts in, this is all good timing really. It's funny because I bought this pair from JQ Sabers before Shane was just like, I'm going to get some 89sabers hilts in. I was like, how about that? It's good timing. So if I flick this on,
formerly Darth, now just more.
My OLED screen working. I've got my two accent pixels on the side here doing blinking in different sequences, and then I've got this pixel down at the bottom doing a slow pulse. All three of these pixels are in one data line. In my config, I have that config line set up for this blade style as a gradient that splits the blade up into three individual segments when it's on, and so then I can program each segment to do its own thing, and then when it's off I split the blade up again using the gradient tool to have three different segments, within the commands to then make them do their own thing. So let me just slide that down like so, self-aligning, nice and easy. And then when that's down there, you can turn these screws by hand. You don't need to use your Allen key, because if you just do it up by hand, always forget about the twist on activation. If you do it up by hand, you can undo them by hand. So it's really easy to get the chassis in now, and it holds it really well, holds the chassis really well. And then you just thread the emitter back on. And there we have it. We have a nice glowing crystal at the bottom there. Accent lights doing their job. If I press the power button, it comes out with blue flicker once in a while. Look at that. So it's doing an audio flicker, then a little blue flash will appear. Just the way I got it. I think it looks really cool. And then the side accents are just on when the blade is on. Nice and loud. So if I turn that off, then we get to talk about the Ventress side, which is really nice. This is gorgeous. It is a bit of a fingerprint magnet. It's got it's clear anodized, so it's not a polished finish. So it's not as much of a fingerprint magnet as a polished finish, but it still comes out with some good old greasy, sweaty marks right there. I have got the blade plug installed up here. It takes 7/8 inch blade as well, both hilts do. The inside of this is about 27mm diameter, which is a real shame because you can't get a 28mm speaker in there then. I have my own design for this hilt which hasn't been produced, of which it can take a 28mm speaker, and more so, and it's really nice, and it's still nice and slim as well, a completely different assembly. But the finish on this is gorgeous. Oh, I love it. I love it, and it feels great in hand. This is a really nice individual saber on its own, let alone in the staff configuration. A quick run through on the chassis, because you've got switches here, top panel, bottom panel, and the hilt kit comes with a PCB that has pre-wired switches on it, which you then wire up. It's got soldering pads on the back. You wire up to your profi board. So you can't have a fully removable chassis due to that section there, unless you use the 3-prong slider connector. But if you use that connector, you lose a lot of space, which is really narrow up here. From here, where the actual contact, where the switches actually sit, where they wire through, all the way up here, really slim. So if you use that 3-prong connector, you lose a lot of space, of which then you can't have, or it's going to be very hard to have a nice crystal chamber up here, which I wanted to have a nice crystal up here to vent some light through all these lovely holes. So I went for a removable speaker battery setup as well. Again, 22mm Veco speaker. Again, I had a problem with the Smuggler's Outpost speakers on this one as well. I was disappointed, but we'll give it another go and see if we can't do any better on the second set. Might just be absolutely fine. So, put that there. All you do is unscrew this clear anodized section down at the bottom here to reveal a nice it's a very fine black thread here. So I have got a key slot on my chassis here, and the reason I've got it on this hilt and I don't usually put it on the others, because it's a very fine thread, it takes more turns, therefore longer to compress the springs, and if this is free to rotate like this, as those are taking forever to compress, they're also turning. Whereas if you've got a very thick thread and you're turning it, you don't turn it that far, and it also the springs on the pins compress a lot quicker due to a thicker, fatter thread. So it's safer for the pins to have a keyed part of the chassis here. So you just turn it until you feel it go, oh, and it's in position. Feel that, keep it tilted downwards, and you thread it all the way up.
Formerly Darth, now just Maul.
And there we have the lovely glowing crystal here. So something very interesting to note about this Ventress hilt, it comes with this accent piece, this red anodized accent piece here. which is really neat. Looks really cool from the outside of the Saber. One problem with it though, this hole here is too small to get one of the emitter PCBs up through on a slide in and slide out chassis, or even on a fixed chassis. So then you've got to have an extra PCB holder up here, which then reduces your blade depth, which also means you get less shine through around the PCB holder. Equally, the shoulder from this hole here through to this side is here, and that's too deep to get the stock's long pin emitter PCBs. The pins are still too short to travel all the way through to make a nice connection to your blade. This is a 7/8 inch hole here, yet I can't get a connector through there. I could if I put an extra part of the chassis on the top and then wired it all through, but then I've lost all my light emittance from this lovely accent area. So all I do when I go to put a blade in here, I just unscrew this bit, stick it to the side, and then you can still get your 7/8 inch blade down here, no misalignment whatsoever, nice and tight, all the way to your fixed part of the chassis up here, no problem at all. Like with a blade plug, if you're going to use a blade, just unscrew this red bit, light up your blade red, and it'll glow through really lovely through these holes here. Bit of an odd move here, this one, but still doesn't stop the fit and the function of this beautiful Saber. 22mm Veco speaker is still lovely and loud. Still really loud. I absolutely adore those 22mm. They also allow for a lot more install space. Not that I don't love 28s, I love 28s as well, nice and loud, beefy sound, but 22s are really, really good. So yeah, that's that. Put that to the side and we'll connect these up. So in order to connect up the two hilts, you unscrew what is effectively a thread cap at the bottom here on the pommel. So you unscrew that. And this is entirely clockable. This thread here is entirely clockable. Underneath here, these are just held on with 3M, double-sided 3M tape. Peel those off, you've got grub screws here, you've got two gold grub screws here as well to grip onto the threaded core to orientate it as you please to make sure that these two hilts line up when you put them together. So we'll just unscrew the buttons, the fake buttons, take out the crystal, out the bottom, slide in the coupler, thread the first button in, not too tight, not all the way, just grab the thread, put the other one in all the way, then tighten that one back up again. And then you thread them together. Now I already pre-clocked these, so this should thread together nicely in a nice clocked position with the switches all lining up. Just a quick nip up and there we go, look at that. So this is a gorgeous stuff. I love it. I absolutely adore it. I am a big fan of 89sabers hilts and how they look and feel. Yeah, I'm glad Shane is going to go to get some on the Saber Bay website as well. I think you guys will appreciate it. It's nice to shout out some other wonderful talent within the community, and I've always been a big fan of 89sabers. I was a big fan of their Fallen V2, but even bigger fan of my own Survivor design. But yeah, I still think the V2 is one of the best. I wasn't a big fan of the V3, Fallen V3. The pommel looked great, but the anodizing colour was off, and the internal sizing problems for the chassis was a real big problem, and also the way the emitter fins gripped on was very awkward design to assemble and disassemble if you're going to get some PCBs down now, what have you. But hey, there's the JSJ Survivor out there, so you know, especially a new run. Anyway, distractions. So you've got nice light venting through the grip, sorry, not the grip, the coupler section around here, which is from the PCB that was lighting up the crystal in the bottom of here. Now, when I turn these on, light them up. When I turn these on, I sound like a Ghostbuster. Lighten up. When I turn these on, it's a lot quieter, and you may notice that it might come across in the sound as well, amongst all the background noise, amongst me speaking and my printer going on right next to me. It's quieter because of that sound there. That speaker there is pointing towards this end, and this speaker here is missing sound towards that end, and they're colliding and coming out the same sound vent. There we go. Which is what is creating the problem, which is why the hilt, like the JSJ Survivor, is designed so you can at least vent out of the main body for staff mode and coupler mode without distorting your sound. But still, I love it. I think it's awesome. Really, really cool. Obviously, the 89sabers come in a really neat box as well. Very firm and sturdy, well packed, got good foam in there. And they come with Allen keys and what have you, and spare grub screws. But oh yeah, both hilts have a cover tape on the back as well. But yeah, this is wonderful. This is gorgeous hilt. I'm really happy to have this because I love Season 7 of Clone Wars when Ahsoka goes to Mandalore and fights Maul, and he was expecting Anakin Skywalker. This is awesome. I don't think I've chatted about this. Did I chat about this? About how this comes to be? So when Asajj loses her curved hilts, she picks up one of this hilt off the black market, and when she is killed, it is buried with her, and I believe it's exhumed with her body when Darth Maul digs her up, or at least gets something to dig her up. As far as my memory serves, that is the way it happens. I could have made a mistake there, but yeah, that's a really cool backstory. I love her hilts. I actually think she's a really cool character, and I think Darth Maul ends up being a really cool character in the end, thanks to Dave Filoni. Did I say Filoni or Filoni? I meant Filoni. Anyway, I'm tired, I'm hot, I'm sweaty, it's very warm in here. This has been a great set to install. Chassis will be available at Saber Bay. All of the Darth Maul ones are done. I've just got to do different board designs for this one. I forgot to mention, in order to access the board, when you want to access the board, what I did was I wired up 2 small JST connectors in here, so if I wanted to get access to the board in that very, very rare occasion, you unscrew this panel here and you've got access, unplug the JSTs, poke them back in, and you can slide the top part of the chassis out, no problem at all. I didn't want to use the 3-prong connector, sliding connector thing, because you lose a lot of the ID on what is already a very tight ID in there, which I have a feeling if I did use it, I wouldn't have even been able to get a stock emitter PCB up there to slide up and down past that connector. So this is the best method I could come up with. Yeah, that's it. Right, I am going to grab a beer. Very hot. It's late. I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Go support 89sabers. Go buy one of their hilts from Shane when they come in stock if you're in the US. If you're in the UK and you want some, go look at JQ Sabers. Darren stocks a big selection there as well, a vast selection. Of course, 89's got a very big selection of hilts anyway, and Darren's very good on his shipping, very efficient man. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you in the next video. Bye.